So in talking about the Republican Party becoming the party of married people and the fact that single women flock to the Democrat Party, and as I said before, single women are, I think, the easiest people to manipulate with fear. I really believe that to be true for all kinds of reasons, which I outlined before. But it is really interesting to watch the way people deal with marriage and the threat of marriage to them and the way they can't think about marriage in certain ways. There's a piece I want to share with you from the Wall Street Journal. And a lot of their kind of lifestyle pieces have to do with money because they're the Wall Street Journal. And the piece is called "Moving In Together Doesn't Match the Financial Benefits of Marriage, But Why?" Subhead is "Married couples are four times as wealthy as unmarried couples who live together." This is by Julia Carpenter. So she says, a walk down the aisle can be a route to greater wealth and prosperity for couples in the U.S. Married people have higher net worths and are more likely to be homeowners than their unmarried counterparts. The mystery, though, is why cohabitating but unmarried couples struggle to build wealth in the same way. As of 2019, the median net worth for cohabiting couples aged 25 to 34 was $17,372, a quarter that of the $68,210 for married couples. And that is the median couple. That's the median range, right? For singles, it's $7,341. So being married makes you richer, right? The wealth gap between partnered and married couples is larger than one might expect. And Anna Kent, a senior researcher at the St. Louis Fed, says it's so intriguing. Americans are moving in together at higher rates, according to data from Pew Research, and the share of U.S. adults who are currently married steadily declined from close to 60% in the 1990s to under half in 2019. Over the same period, the share of adults aged 18 to 44 living with a partner climbed to 59%. So people are moving in together, but they're not getting married. And somebody says here, Andrew Cherlin, a professor at Johns Hopkins, he says marriage has become a capstone event. In other words, you wait until you are established and have money, and then you get married, right? And that is the opposite of the way, for instance, I did it. My wife married a starving artist. I mean, she married a guy with no prospects whatsoever. And yet we have done quite well for ourselves. And we put all our money together. There was never a question. This is really interesting. We're kind of the last generation or the last people to have done this. Basically, we got married, so our money was we got one bank account. Now people discuss it. Should we put our money in one bank account? It's really interesting. So now they give an example. Melissa Mowry is a 30-year-old communications manager in Asheville, North Carolina. She's been with her boyfriend for 5 years, living together nearly 4. They don't share a joint bank account, but they split the cost of rent and other bills. And even so, Miss Mowry said she can't make sense of the financial gap between her relationship and that of married couples. We're already saving a lot of money and splitting the cost on most things, she said. I don't understand how married couples are accumulating wealth in ways that we're not doing. And then the author says there are legal and tax benefits to marriage, but research suggests the financial security and long-term mindset of those who tie the knot may also be a powerful driver of wealth. Married people may be much more likely to have conversations around what goals they have for their financial future. And they go on with these very practical, you might call them materialist reasons why people married couples get so much richer. And this one lady they're interviewing says, most of my married friends have bought a house. I just don't know how they did it. Everyone talks about how when you get married, you accumulate wealth, but I don't know what that means. And everybody in the article, including the author, is baffled by this. And I was thinking, what's interesting about this article is the things you're not allowed to think. The things you're not allowed to think about marriage, about men, about women, about what makes a couple do so well. And I'd like to just put forward a couple of ideas that, people who get married are living in a way that is conducive to human thriving. Capitalism is the way we manage our greed. And I've said a million times that capitalism doesn't solve our problems. It's simply a way of managing our greed by putting our greed into a machine where the greed is forced to serve other people in order to thrive, right? And marriage is, in the same way, puts our romantic and erotic impulses into an institution that helps society to thrive, because our romantic and erotic impulses are very, very chaotic. You know, they're very powerful. They sweep us away. But marriage helps us put them in a place where they can be served, just like our greed can be served in capitalism, but also we don't become antisocial. We don't destroy society through our sexual impulses. But on top of that, of course, there's also this spiritual factor to marriage, which is that a man and woman become one flesh. And as I've said before, I think you begin to develop a truer, fuller, more three-dimensional vision of the world as you become a kind of team that you simply don't become if you haven't committed yourself to each other for the long term, for essentially eternity, for your whole lives. On top of this, I wouldn't be surprised if married people are more conventional in some ways than people who live together. Living together obviously is not the conventional choice. Marriage is. And so it wouldn't surprise me if married people take more gender-oriented roles. If wives and husbands do not act more like wives and husbands than boyfriend and girlfriend living together do. And here's what I think that does. I think that when a woman makes a home for a family, she not only satisfies a very deep instinct in herself, but she sets off a very deep instinct in her husband to support her and to support those children. I mean, I did not really become a good earner until I had a child. And then the minute I brought that child home, the first thing that occurred to me is, oh my God, what happens if I don't make a good living? And the thing is, when the government says to you, well, what we need is more childcare, and what we need is more, gifts to parents so they can take care of that. No. The whole nature of marriage is that when a woman creates a home for a man and her children, she ignites this instinct to protect them and to serve them and to support them in this man. On top of which, by taking care of a lot of the things in his life, sex would be one of them, a place to live, a place to be, someone to be, which men are very chaotic people. They go after pleasure, they go after money, they go after things, and suddenly with those things taken care of, I mean, I really do not know how a man as offbeat as I am would thrive at all without a home, which I would never have had on my own. I would never have made a home on my own. I'm just too much, I live too much in my head to have done that. And my wife, by giving me a home, set me free to do the things that make the money that we have, right? I mean, suddenly I was free to do what I do. And so, happily, my wife loved raising children. She loved homemaking. And, I didn't want to marry somebody who didn't want to do that. I didn't want to force it on somebody. I didn't want somebody to be unhappy. But also, it meant that when she was ready to move on and to do other things, we had the income to let her do that. And then she started contributing to her income to a career that was to my career, which was already well along. And we were able to sustain, get through periods. An artist's life is not a steady one. It never was. It never has been. It never will be. We were able to get through those periods because we had now created this machine for that took care of a lot of our spiritual needs. It took care of a lot of our spiritual needs. It took care of a lot of our creature comforts, and it brought out the best in us. And those are the things that you can't talk about in marriage. I've written about this in my memoir, The Great Good Thing, and I've talked about it before maybe. I didn't want to get married. We've been living together for years when my wife and I decided to get married. I didn't see the point of it. It was just some silly ceremony. The moment the ceremony was over, absolutely true story, I walked into the bathroom and I just looked in the mirror and I gave myself the high sign, not a white supremacy sign, just the high sign. Okay, you did a great thing. And the reason was I knew the minute the ceremony was over, I had gone through a spiritual change. I had been living with this woman. I loved this woman desperately. I thought there was no reason to get married, but marriage changed everything. We became a different entity. I became a different entity, and everything that came of that, and all the good that came of it because we made the commitment. We leapt into the dark. You heard Stephen Meyer with that great quote from Augustine, believe in order to know. I think that there are some things in life, love and God are good examples that you can only prove by living them. You live them over a period of time and you find out that they bring something out in you did not even know was there, but is everything. It is everything about you. Marriage is a spiritual state as well as a social instrument. And you don't get married to help society. You get married because it actually brings out the best in your spirit. And that, in a good capitalist society, is also going to make you probably a lot wealthier and a lot more secure. And those are just things you can't talk about in the Wall Street Journal or almost anywhere. And these people who are not getting married are just plain crazy. They just are. If you want more mind-expanding content like this, like and subscribe, and please subscribe to the Andrew Klavan Podcast.